starting April 2022 until 30th of June 2022. That's quarter 2. Ms. Makota, may you please take the committee through the submission.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, this is the submission as you've indicated. It is for the ROMCO GTA1, and that is the tariff for the volumes below 120 million gigajoules per annum. On a quarterly basis, NERSA does calculation to show which tariff is applicable for the quarter, and we also monitor compliance to ensure that ROMCO complies with the GTA1 tariff. I am going to ask Mr. Njezula to take the members through the details of the calculation.
Thanks, Chair. During this quarter, which is quarter 2, we monitored ROMCO's GTA1 tariff and in line with the pipeline gas agreement. And the tariff itself was compliant. And for the next period, the expected tariff, given the PPI, is expected to increase by 3.96. Therefore, we recommend that the subcommittee notes the compliance and the tariff for GTA1 in the previous quarter. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Njezula and Ms. Magoda. Members, the submission is open for discussion. If you have any questions of clarity or areas of improvements in the analysis of this tariff. By show of hands, members, if you have any question of clarity. If none, then members, I would like to take you straight to the recommendations. And the recommendations are on page on page 7. The PGS is requested to note the ROMCO GTA1 tariff of 18 rands 3 cents per gigajoule for the period 1st April 2022 to June 2022. And the table that shows the tariffs starting from 2000 is provided here, members, so that you can see how the tariffs have moved during that period. By show of hands, members, if you're happy to note that the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Pugula. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thank you, Advocate Tole. Maybe I'm missing others. Ms. Mbongose, I note you and thank you. I also support and welcome Ms. Mbongose. I tried to introduce you to the committee earlier on, and you are welcomed to the PGS subcommittee. Thank you, Mr. Mkhize.
Thank you, Chair. I struggled to connect. I didn't have the link and it wasn't on my diary as well. Sorry about that.
All right, no problem, Mr. Mbongose. That's noted. Thank you very much. All right, we then move on to item number 11, which is the report on the developments in new gas sources in South Africa and neighboring countries. And this also involves some other developments internationally that may have implications on the gas market in South Africa. Please take us through this report, Mr. Ngumalo, together with Mr. Milato.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hope I can be heard. I hope I'm audible clearly. And Chairperson, maybe just quickly a special welcome for the new board members, Mr. Kukula in particular, as well as Ms. Mbongose. Chairperson, just quickly in terms of this report, this is a report that we produce in terms of the APP, really where we scan the environment out there to check for developments that are occurring within the industry so that as NERSA, as a regulator, we can be able to respond with necessary regulatory measures and also strategize to the extent that it's necessary to actually respond to any key developments within the market. So we do this on a quarterly basis. So this is the first for this quarter. And Chairperson, we developed this report again just to assist members in terms of focusing on developments that are important with regard to sources of gas that are identified out there within the market. And members will be aware that South Africa does not have its own monetized indigenous resources. We rely on Mozambique for gas. So it becomes important that we actually monitor and search around for key developments with regard to new sources of gas that are emerging. We know that there are those in neighboring countries such as Mozambique, but also in countries such as Tanzania. But we're also focusing in the report on local developments around explorations that might be happening, but also generally developments that are happening, including the impact of the surge in gas prices that we've seen recently. And Chairperson, just to again identify the implications of those developments. In terms of local developments, Chairperson, quickly, the most notable development that we've seen is really around the commencement of operations in terms of the LNG facility in Virginia in the Free State. That has been in progress for quite some time in terms of construction after it was licensed by NASA. So it is a welcome development that we've seen that operation coming on stream. Chairperson, as you've directed also, but perhaps you'll announce that in appropriate time, we will make arrangements to try and perhaps get an opportunity for members to go and see that facility. And also the other development that's important is really the initiatives and measures that are taken by the likes of SOSO with regard to just searching for LNG sources to supplement the decline in gas sources in Mozambique, and to also make sure that there is focus on other alternatives such as hydrogen.
Mr. Ngumalo, I don't know whether the sound at the background comes from your side, but we can hardly hear you clearly, and I'm sure even stakeholders are struggling from their side. If you can try and minimize the sound at the background, please. Go ahead. If you need to quickly request another team member to assist, please do so. I'm giving you 1 more minute to finalize the introduction of the submission.
I think let me hand over to colleagues. I do have the challenge that I'm sitting somewhere to access power. I've got load shedding. Perhaps two colleagues can just take over.
All right, without wasting any time, I would like Dumisani Mtiani, please come in and complete the report, the introduction of the report.
Oh, okay. Thanks, ma'am. I will complete the report. Mr. Ngumalo was still talking about the issue of Sasol, ma'am, and its desire, for instance, to reduce 30% of its emissions by 2030 through replacement of coal with natural gas. And to that extent, Sasol Gas has considered LNG imports, ma'am, from the Matola terminal that is planned by operated by Total Energies and Geo in Mozambique. So this is the new venture that they want to embark on, and this is also necessitated by the decline in the production of natural gas from the demand and the Pande fields. And the thought is that the LNG imports from Matola can supplement the decline in the gas reserves, and that will be fed into the LNG will be converted into gas and fed into the main pipeline that is transporting gas to the South African market, and that they expect to do that by 2026. And other than that, I think on the African continent, with the war taking place in Russia and Ukraine, we see most of the oil measures like BP, Shell, the Italian ENI and the Equinor, that they've tried to shift the focus for gas sourcing and exploration to the African projects, and they want to seize the opportunity now to target the African markets with the gas supplies. And countries like Senegal, Mauritania, Algeria, Egypt, as well Tanzania and Mozambique are the countries that have been targeted, Chair. And
all right,
other than
take it as read.
Yes, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Thank
you very much, members. We would like to encourage the team to really assist us as well in terms of introducing the documents. We take the documents as read, as members have prepared on these documents. At this point, members, I would like to allow you to engage with the submission. If there are any questions of clarity or maybe some suggestions on improvements in this report for the team and for the benefit of the committee, and so that we know how we can actually manage situations where our mandate gets affected, and in particular, in this case, we are affected by the Russia-Ukraine war in terms of the price of gas, for instance, and also because of the demand for LNG coming from Africa. It is also an issue. So I would like to open it up for discussion, members, if there are any questions. By show of hands, members. Advocate Sithole, followed by Mr. Mkhize. You may start, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation. Chair, I just wanted to check as to what an extent does this report take into account the current draft SADC gas master plan, or if it doesn't, is there an intention to sort of cover some of the developments and the plans that are articulated in that particular plan, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Sithole. Mr. Mkhize.
Yeah, thanks, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation from Malin Tian. I just would like to get clarity here, because we seem to have different headings or subjects. You know, when one looks at this, I think it's also going to help to follow through on some of them, that they don't fall by the wayside. In a way, just tracking progress. In other words, for example, they would at one stage mention shale gas, right? But I don't know, maybe I missed it here. I could not really get to the shale gas issue. For example, we know that in I think it around in July, around the 8th of July, there was this regulations, the NEMA intention to prescribe minimum conditions for onshore exploration of oil and gas intended for fracking. And then there was also in the same month there was the proposed regulations pertaining to the exploration and production of onshore oil and gas requiring hydraulic fracturing, which is fracking. So I'm saying that there are these developments that are taken on the side. Sometimes they seem to fall by the wayside. And I'm saying once we start to talk to the topic, I think it will help to say maybe there was no development in this specific area, so that you keep tracking this development instead of just leaving it out altogether. I think that will help to make sure that everything is captured. And then I think the issue of looking at it as a region, SADC, is also important. I think I'm covered, partly covered by what the CEO has already mentioned. Also, I think the report to some extent must also give us the benefit of recommendations, not just to recommend the noting by this subcommittee, but what lessons are coming out of this. And I think if we've got this kind of a report, I was a bit confused by the conclusion, just mentioning the Russia-Ukraine war, but not saying what have we done, what needs to be done as part maybe of recommendations on what on the issue at hand. For example, to also highlight that we're also looking at our own reviewing the pricing methodology in view of that. I think the benefit of a report actually is in the recommendations on how to deal with the emerging issues. Including in that is the issue of gas infrastructure and infrastructure in general being easy target where there is a political turmoil, and also where in South Africa we find that as part of economic sabotage, the product theft and the damage to property, and just to keep those things in the radar and be able to talk to those in power to say what needs to be done and make some recommendation from our side, and not be like sitting alongside and then seeking maybe down the years to blame, whereas we did have some kind of voice that we could have made in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize, for your inputs. Mr. Kumet?
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to you and members and management again. My question just relates to paragraph 10.14. I guess for me the question there is if we could be maybe further explained in terms of why Sasol would choose not to engage further in the possibility of importing gas from the from northern part of Mozambique, maybe even linking up with Tanzania, in favor of LNG, in the sense that I would assume that LNG would be subject to all of these war situations, the impact of wars and things like that, because the price of LNG would be affected by that, I would assume. But also in terms of security of supply, it is more likely to be impacted in terms of that kind of supply. So it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not sure if the team could perhaps give us an indication of why Sasol would choose not to, I think as expected, to just extend the pipeline from those pandemic gas fields to link up to the northern extensive gas fields. Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ngumalo and Mr. Milato. Please respond to the questions of clarity, but also note that some of the issues raised are just meant to enhance the analysis that goes into this report, even for the future. So you need to just continue to improve and make this report useful. I think that's just the contribution by other members. But please respond to the other questions of clarity. 3 minutes for that. I see RSU, you no longer show the clock. I think it is important that we revert back to that tool so that we can help in terms of time management and efficiency. Mr. Ngumalo and Mr. Milato.
Chairperson, I'll ask Mr. Milato. My challenge is still not improving, so I'm going to have to find an alternative place. So I think I'll ask Mr. Milato to assist quickly while I do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Milato, raised by Advocate Siptoli.
Yes, Chair. The comment by the CEO is noted on the gas master plan, Chair. I think in the last report we reported about the developments, but in line with what Mr. Mkhize said, I think in the future report we'll have to keep the momentum on some of these most important issues, Chair. But then I think we'll have to check in the next report about the developments and make sure we keep it in the report. Mr. Mkhize asked about shale, on the issue of shale gas. I think we reported, Chair, here on from paragraph 829 to paragraph 825 about the proposed regulations and minimum regulations that have been published by the minister, and that there's 45 days to comment and make written submissions on this one, Chair. So the issue of shale gas has been reported. And yes, on the issue of recommendations, I know, Chair, you've been raising this issue again as to we also need to report on the impact as the energy regulator of some of the developments, as well as make the necessary recommendation. We'll try to make to incorporate this, Chair, in the upcoming report. And on the issue of infrastructure as well, the issue of product theft, etc. It can be part of the issues that will be standard in the report, so that we keep on reporting about them. Then on the issue, Chair, of LNG in Matola by Mr. Gumede versus natural gas in the north. I'm not sure of this one, Chair. We can find out from Sasol, but I can assume that maybe because of the distance, Chair, from Dimane and Pande to the Rovuma Basin, I don't think the distance will allow the connection of another pipeline without incurring major cost. And I assume that maybe Sasol thought that the easiest way, rather than to build another pipeline that will connect to the Romco pipeline, is to just go for LNG in Matola and just regasify the LNG into the main pipeline coming to South Africa. Well, I'm not sure of the economics in terms of pricing, Chair. Yeah, I'll pause there, Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And maybe those are some of the things you need to just inquire about, given the fact that the industry is facing the gas supply constraints, and there is a risk when you're looking at the existing fields in Mozambique. We do know that we have engaged a licensee with regards to the options available to the licensee. Maybe what you can do without answering for them is just to find out what are their plans, given the fact that we have engaged with them for more than a month, more than a year ago. Perhaps they may have other concrete plans with regards to alternative sources of gas, given the current risk, so that we can understand then whether the one that will make economic sense will be sourcing it in the southern part of Mozambique, which is LNG Matola, and then take it through Resano Garcia and then to South Africa. So maybe those are just some of the things then that you may want to engage with the licensee with regards to their developments, as we should in terms of the rules and the regulations, and find out what plans do they have in place to deal with the looming gas supply risk. Mr. Gumede?
Jefferson, maybe just to add a little bit to my question, can I request that perhaps the team investigates and comes up with a program in terms of ensuring that the role of gas in South Africa can be, okay, let me put it this way. It's clear that for some players, there's a risk that comes with, if you're going to put a pipeline, it's a 40, 50, 60-year investment. LNG perhaps payback could be 20 years. So if there's a risk that people are seeing that they are not sure whether going forward South Africa will support gas, as an energy carrier, it makes more sense to then to invest in something that has got a shorter payback period. Might be a little bit more expensive, maybe playing with other issues of security of supply, but at least it's got in terms of ensuring that you manage your shareholders' money better. It's better to invest in that. But that could well be because perhaps we do need to, at some point, as a nation, just to make sure that there is greater surety in terms of the role of gas, that gas will play in South Africa. And therefore, when we do that, we'll then be able to get greater investments, not only in the pipeline infrastructure, but also what are in the infrastructure, including LNG facilities and things like that, but also in upstream. But if there is this uncertainty that hovers in that industry, that says people are not sure whether even gas exploration in South Africa is going to be supported going forward, and even maybe the use of gas is going to be supported going forward, is that people will then seek to find solutions that minimize that. So I think it would be useful for the team to investigate that and also propose solutions, and maybe even running, so we need to have a position. Otherwise, these necessary investments aren't going to happen. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gumede. I think that point that you made, it was noted already in the meeting of June of the PGS, and the team is busy with that work of looking at various opportunities and in terms of how to ensure that there will be investments in gas in order to deal with the current supply constraints, and also maybe just the role of gas in the era of energy transition. So that report, it should come perhaps before the end of this year or before the end of the financial year, but the team is busy with that. So it will include this aspect as well. Thank you so much. Members, I would like to take you to the recommendations. The recommendations are that the PGS is requested to note the report on the developments in new gas sources in South Africa and neighboring countries for the period April to July 2022. And that is also subject to some enhancements, as well as making sure that the team include recommendations. Mr. Melatu did indicate that. I've stressed that several times, as well as the impact of some of these developments that were observed. So that will now come as standard, but also there will be an action plan attached to this, so that progress is tracked on all of the things that were noted, which are substantial or substantive to the work that we do at NERSA. So those are the two things that I'm putting emphasis on in terms of what the team is expected to do when they bring the next report. Members, are you happy then to note those recommendations in terms of this report and also what the team needs to do in the future? By show of hands, members. Thank you, Advocate Sithole, Ms. Mpungose, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Mkhize, and Mr. Pukula. I also support. Members, we then move on to item number 13, which is the gas, Sasol Gas's monthly gas volume balance for the month of July 2022. Please take it as read and emphasize the key issues that we normally discuss and where members need to get clarification.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is the volume balance for July 2022. In this report, Chair, we've reported that the percentage variance for July was -173%, and the average running variance from August 2021 to July is negative 0.4%. So meaning that the variance is within the expected percentage of 1%. And in this month, Sasol Gas has delivered 12.8 million gigajoules of natural gas to the South African market. And the expected volumes share in terms of GTA 1, 2, and 3 is 13.4 billion gigajoule. So meaning that there is a shortfall of around 0.5 million gigajoules in the gas supplied to the South African market share. With that, Chair, we request the PGS to note the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milatu. Members, are there any questions of clarity on this report? By show of hands, if there are. If none, members, you are requested to note this report on the gas volume balance that in terms of the gas that came from Mozambique and landed in Secunda for the month of July 2022, and all of the other relevant aspects that are contained in this report. By show of hands, members, if you are happy to note. Thank you, Mr. Pukula. Thank you, Mr. Mkize, Ms. Mpungos, Advocates Tole, and Mr. Gumede. I also note. Thank you, members. We are done with the substantive agenda items that we needed to deliberate on in terms of the open meeting. And at this point, I would like to thank stakeholders that were following these discussions. And I would like to then indicate that the live streaming will be stopped at this time so that we can look